right, we are recording this morning and people are logging in. And so we are excited for you to be joining us this morning for our third small business seminar. It's presented by FNB Bank. And we have heard about marketing for your business. We've heard about what platforms you should use and what methods you should use to get new customers and to keep current customers happy. We've talked about service with a smile so far. So we've talked about now that you have these customers in your business, how can you provide an awesome service and product with a smile and provide awesome customer service by going above and beyond. We talked a lot about hospitality during those seminars and how service is just providing what you provide, but hospitality is going above and beyond. And so if you missed that one, be sure to go to our YouTube channel to get that video. And then today we're talking about HR and everything in between that has anything to do with human resources. And Crystal and I were chatting earlier on when we logged on. You have a business, you know about your products, you know about your services, and now you're managing people. And sometimes that can be difficult, or maybe creating policies or onboarding, hiring people, keeping them, retaining employees. All those things are a challenge in a business. And so today we have two professionals here with us to answer all of your questions, which we highly encourage you to type in. We want to hear from you. We want this to be an engaging seminar. We know you have questions because many small businesses don't have HR professionals in their business. And so today is a great day for you to get those questions answered that you have about hiring employees, and everything in between, just like the title says. But today wouldn't be possible without our sponsor, which is FNB Bank, and here representing FNB is Amy Futrell. So Amy, tell us a little bit about FNB this morning.
Good morning. I do want to welcome each of you to our seminar today that the Chamber has graciously put together. FNB, we're thrilled to be a part of this series and the sponsor for the Chamber to make this happen. While we would love for this to be in person so that we could see everyone's smiling faces and interact, we are very thankful that we were able to hold this virtually. The Chamber, like she said, we've had a couple already, so if you weren't able to tune into those, please go back and watch those. There was a wealth of information given, lots of good questions and comments made from the different panelists. So we have been very fortunate to have some wonderful meetings. Today is no exception. I know we've got a great PowerPoint coming up from these two wonderful ladies, and we appreciate, again, you tuning in. So on behalf of FNB Bank, we appreciate all that you do for the small business community, and we are proud to be a part of it. Michelle, I'm going to turn it back over to you for you to introduce today's panelists.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you again to FNB Bank for being with us here this morning and making this possible. So we have two awesome panelists for you today, very experienced in the field of human resources, and I'm going to introduce them, and then I'm going to turn it over to them. They have an awesome PowerPoint prepared for you, but like we talked about earlier, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out, put it in the chat box, and we will make sure to get to them at the end of the presentation. But I want to introduce these two women to you this morning. First, we have Crystal. Crystal is the Senior Vice President and HR Officer for FNB Bank. Crystal has worked in the financial services industry for over 24 years, with 13 of those years serving as an HR professional. So very experienced and here to answer your questions. She's a certified professional in human resources and is currently working toward obtaining a Bachelor of Science degree in human resource management from Western Governors University. Crystal initially turned down the HR position, but quickly learned that she could make a difference by bringing her love of people to the role. She believes that work should be fun and that your coworkers should be family. Crystal believes in the power of community involvement beyond her career. She has worked with several nonprofits, serving in a variety of leadership roles, and has assisted with the start of the first young professional organization for her local Chamber of Commerce. So welcome this morning, Crystal. We also have Sonia Osman here this morning, and Sonia's passion for human resources is rooted in being a servant leader in the industry. As the senior business consultant for Hannah Resource Group, Sonia will be responsible for identifying and serving clients in the Western Kentucky region. She graduated from Murray State University, Go Racers, with a bachelor degree in business, emphasizing human resources. She serves as a consultant to leadership teams and acts as a change agent with highly effective problem-solving skills. With over 15 years of experience, she's been exposed, let's turn this, very experienced here, to many different business sectors, including corporate, manufacturing, construction, hospitality, entertainment, casino, which is fun, and retail. She can formulate partnerships to deliver value-added services to reflect the strategic objectives of the organization. So there's so much more that Sonia can share about herself as well, but I am very excited to have you both on here this morning. And so now I'm going to turn it over to you all to share about human resources this morning.
All right. Thank you very much, Michelle. We are excited to be helping you guys and excited to be a part of this. And Sonia and I have been friends for a few years and have served on several different committees together and serving our communities, and can't think of a better person to be on here with me this morning and helping us. We're gonna just jump right in. We're gonna first talk about what our agenda is today. And first off, we're gonna just kind of break the ice. Sometimes HR can be a little boring, or at least that's what people think from the outside, but it is very far from boring on a daily basis. So we're gonna share a couple of our favorite HR stories, maybe that will make you laugh and probably shake your head. We're going to talk to you about why core values are important for your business. We're going to share some success stories, some common small business HR questions, also some common small business mistakes. There was one question submitted about COVID and to vaccinate and whether or not you should really encourage your employees to do so. And then we're going to just share some sample questions for you for your small business when you're looking to hire. So Sonia, do you want to start with some stories that you've experienced in the HR world?
Well, you know, it's funny that you say that because there's so many, and there's not even one in particular that I can think of other than, you know, the interviewing process, because you have some really interesting interactions with individuals. So I, on a level of understanding as an HR professional, I really want to make it my duty to educate individuals on how to go to an interview, to participate in an interview, to dress an interview in a proper resume, because those are the things that we really look for. And those are the memorable memories that I have in moments in my career. So that's why I do what I do, is to make sure that we don't have those funny memories and they come in prepared and ready to go.
One of my favorite stories to tell, probably the worst interview that I've ever had. I was interviewing at one of our locations and the lady was 45 minutes to an hour late for her interview. But then when she did come in, she was, you know, we are a financial institution. So when she came in, she had on shorts, like athletic shorts and a t-shirt, and then her Adidas sandals with her socks. And she brought her 8-year-old daughter to the interview with her. But not only did she bring her daughter to the interview, she brought her into the interview, and the daughter was asking us questions. We heard more from the daughter than we did from the mom. So that was a very interesting interview that we had. That young woman did not get the job. She didn't seem like the right fit for our organization. But then another interview, or another, I'm sorry, not an interview, but another situation in HR that I thought was interesting. And one of my favorite stories is, we believe that FNB is a family and we try to take care of our own. We had an employee one time that was not feeling well, and she'd been having some health concerns, and her manager offered to drive her home that day so that, you know, we were taking care of her. But when she got her home and went to help her get inside, the lady's dog ran out after her and bit her, and she had to end up going and getting a rabies shot from the dog from her injury. So that was one of my most unique workers' comp claims, honestly, that I had to file. But HR is always interesting. It is not a boring position. You never know what we're going to experience from day to day. I always say I have a list when I come to work, but I have a different list halfway through the day because something always comes up. Would you agree with that, Sonia?
Agreed, my friend, agreed. You can have a to-do list all day long, but you may never get to that to-do list because there's other things that are happening that need your attention.
Absolutely. So we're going to just jump right into something that Sonia and I both believe is one of the most important aspects of HR, and why it is important for you to have core values for your company. So Sonia, why don't you kick us off with some statistics that you found, and then we'll kind of spend some more time talking about that.
Absolutely. In my research and doing this presentation, I like stats because it really gives us a feel of what is happening out there in the workforce and in the environments and the culture of our organizations. So the value of your company is really mainly the DNA of your organization, and it helps set you apart from your competition. With these values and beliefs, philosophies, and your principles, it really drives your business, and it helps everyone to reach the goals that is set for the company. So with those stats we found that 35% of US workers say they would pass on the perfect job if they felt the company culture was not a good fit for them. And that's really high percentage. Along with that, we also found that actively disengaged employees cost US companies between 450 to 550 billion with a B in loss of productivity on an annual basis. So as business leaders or small business leaders, the culture is very important and very conducive for someone to be integrated into that team.
I agree with that. In my bio that Michelle shared with you, and part of FNB's core values is that we are a family, and that's how we treat each other. So that also means that when you're a family, if things aren't going right, we have conversations. We don't shy away from having those difficult conversations because we know that sometimes you have to have those difficult conversations to help make you better. And also by having a set core values for your company, that is your guiding light. Your decisions that you make based on how you market, how you treat your customers, what kind of product or services you're going to offer, all that should come back to those core values. And that should be what helps guide you and direct you. It also, from an HR perspective and from a business owner perspective, it gives you a safeguard. If you're having issues, if you're having an employee that's not working out, if they are not living up to those core values, that is a wonderful reason for you to take action if you need to do so. Let me warn you though on this. If you say these are my core values, then you need to make sure that you're standing by those core values, because your employees are going to expect that from you as well.
Sort of like it reminds me of the heartbeat, because everything just flows to that. And once that stops and it's not consistent, then there's room for deviation here and there. So it's so important that we really grasp that concept.
One of our core values at FNB is that we value each other. So one of the hardest problems about owning a business is dealing with the people issue, as they say. So if you have someone that is, in our instance, not living that core value of valuing each other, then we can address that issue and hopefully make work a better place to be. So with that, along with our core values, another important thing that I have learned, especially in my experience, is that people don't leave jobs. Most of the time they leave managers. And so we have to make sure that whoever's in charge, and that might be you, that you are not forgetting that the employees need something from you. They need interaction from you. I had an employee once that constantly complained about their manager, and they said, they never even tell me good morning. They don't ask about what's going on in my life. They need that from you. They need the interaction. And I have seen this time and time again. Maybe your daughter is getting married and it has been a huge part of your life, and you've come to work and you've talked about it. But if your manager or your supervisor or your coworkers don't ask about that and they're not involved in that for you, then there can be a disconnect in that. Sonia, would you agree on some of those
do agree. And I have a story for myself that I'd like to share with you guys. I worked for an organization where we were doing lots of engagement with our employees, and just trying to be innovative in that respect and trying to understand the need, along with serving our customers with quality services and as well. And we had one of the employees that felt the need, and a burden to do a food pantry in our organization. And it was such a blessing. And it was such a positive for our employees. However, within inside of that, we had an employee that was really not wanting to, share the struggles that were going on within their lives. And the purpose of that was to help and to assist and to be, meet a need for an employee. So I was about to leave to go home for the evening, and this employee called and stated that his family was really struggling and needed some help. And so immediately I got on the phone and made some calls, and the need was met. But we purchased a vast amount of needs for this family and brought it to him after hours. And it warms my heart because the employee really, it just ingrained in him the loyal and the dedication that we had for our employees and how we wanted them to be successful in the organization and what we would do to help that and to make it possible. So HR is not always going to the principal's office. And it seems like that sometimes, because when someone says their manager asks them to go see HR, it's like, am I in trouble? What's going to happen? And it's not always like that. We love people, and I'm a very person that loves people. I love to see them happy. I love to help them in everything that they're doing, especially in their careers, to make them successful. And my job has been so rewarding, and I've been very blessed to work with the organizations to be able to meet the needs of those. And Crystal, you as well as I do, we both have that heart when it comes to our job and the passion that we carry with that.
I agree with that. I have told some people before that when I took over HR, it was not any really, I had never worked for large corporations before and didn't really understand what the role of HR was. So I was scared by that. I was scared of giving up my customers. But then I found out that my customers are now my coworkers and the face of the bank. So I gained a whole new set of customers that I get to fight on their behalf for. Sonia mentioned something that they had done at a previous company, and something that we do for ourselves as well to help make it feel more like family is we have a benevolent committee. So it is, or a benevolent fund. So it's employees helping employees. They may give $1 a paycheck, but then if an employee has a hardship or if they have something going on with their lives, then we can take money from that fund and help them. We also use it to give gifts for graduations or weddings or births. So we've been really busy over the last few months. We had several of our college students graduating. We had we had employees adding to their families. We've had employees getting married. So we've been able to use that fund for employees to help each other. And that's another way to make your business feel more like home and feel more like family. So I asked a few of my friends, what are some questions that you have in your small business or things that you have experienced that you wish you kind of knew at the beginning? So one of the questions that's a big topic usually is, am I paying my employees fairly? And can I just pay them a salary? Which in the HR world, we call that exempt or non-exempt. So they're either exempt from overtime pay or they're not. And the fact of the matter is that most of your employees are probably going to have to be an hourly employee. And I think that this is a common mistake that many small businesses and maybe even many inexperienced HR professionals make. It's easy to pay somebody a salary, but that's not always the right answer and could land you in a huge lawsuit if you have not got people in the right category. We do have some resources for you on that. I think that we're going to put into the chat later. The Department of Labor has some wonderful resources for you that tells you which type of employees can and cannot be in an exempt position, or as you probably refer to it as a salaried position. There are very specific criteria that has to be met for an employee to be classified as an exempt employee. Sonia, I'm sure in your consulting firm's experience, you have seen many employers have employees in the incorrect category. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And we also offer in businesses like compensation studies so that they can differentiate between those two. They send various job descriptions. We look at that, and just so that they can see what's going on in the industry, because compensation is a difficult topic to navigate. It's also, finding balance between employee satisfaction and balance in the budget is a crucial part of the business. So companies really need to define those philosophies and to that reflect the base pay. And it's also determined to be transparent about communicating the design of the compensation program to the employee, just so that there's no higher expectation on the employee's end.
And if you are watching this and you have specific questions, Sonia nor I are legal. We are not an attorney, but we would be happy to help you get some answers to your questions. If you have someone that maybe you feel like you have in the wrong category, we'll be happy to help you with that.
And I just put the link to the DOL in the chat box for the exempt and non-exempt. So you can just click on that link and it automatically brings you to that session.
Right. And they have some wonderful resources that will just basically walk you through. Are you paying this employee over $455 a week? If you're not, then automatically they cannot be exempt. So there's kind of a step-by-step process that will walk you through that and help you with that. And I'm going to say this incorrectly, but I know that if someone were to say, I'm being paid salary and they owe me all this overtime back pay, I think it's up to 3 years worth of overtime back pay that they could say that you have to pay them. And then if they felt like it was something you did intentionally, then you could have fines associated with that as well. So that could be a really big deal and a big expense for your small business. Another thing that I hear often from new managers and from small business owners is that I have an employee that's just not meeting my standards. I'm busy running my business. I can't look after everything that they do every day, and I just don't know what to do. Maybe this person that you hired is a friend, somebody you've known your whole life. Those can be really difficult conversations. Sonia, what feedback do you have on this one for them?
Well, researching and even in my experience, what I've learned is the key to managing an underperforming employee is to, first of all, you need to identify that employee's areas of strengths and weaknesses. Where are those opportunities? Devise solutions to obstacles that they may be facing and encourage them to move forward with that. But, here are some considerations when you are having that conversation, and have open dialogue and conversation with them and be transparent about expectations. Make sure those expectations are clear and they understand them. Like set a roadmap for improvement with those opportunities that you've talked about, and provide ongoing constructive feedback. That is such a huge plus. And I know Crystal will comment on that, but that is, if you continue to just provide that feedback, they know if they're improving or if they're not, where they need to tweak that roadmap that you set with them in the goals and objectives, and then provide necessary tools and resources that they need to complete their jobs. Sometimes we don't know unless they tell you. So with that transparent communication, that open dialogue will give you the information you need to go forward.
One of the things that I say often is that someone cannot know what you expect from them unless you tell them. So one of the things later on that we're going to talk about is having job descriptions for your employees and making sure that you clearly define what you expect from them. You can't assume that they know what you want. You have to be sure that you are setting that expectation. You've already had some small business training on service. So if you don't lay that groundwork, if you don't set the example for your employees, they're just going to behave and they're going to act the way that they always have, and they're not going to meet the needs that you have from them.
Exactly.
Some of you guys might have had some employees that have asked to work from home. That might not be the best scenario for some of your small businesses, but it might work for others. This past year, FNB learned all about our employees working from home, and we put in some remote work policies and agreements. I'd be happy to share that with you if you're interested in that, and to talk to you more one-on-one on that. But I don't feel like that's probably the best place for us to spend our time. So our next question that we have is, should I have an employee handbook? Let's say you're a small business and you only have 5 employees. I'm going to tell you, I still think you should have an employee handbook. Nearly every single day, I will get a question from an employee. And even though I write the handbook, I still pull the handbook out every time I get asked a question, so that I can verify what I'm saying is what is written and what has been acknowledged from the employees. Multiple times in my career in HR, I have found that the handbook ties into your core values, and all those things should work together. And you should be able to go into your handbook and say, this is how we handle this. This is what we do. It should be your, I don't want to say Bible, but it should be your thing that guides you in your business.
It should be your playbook, really.
Playbook, absolutely. That's a better word.
Yeah, it should be your playbook, because you place processes and policies in there to help you mitigate from those risks. And the content in the handbook also lowers the risk of employment liabilities and reduces lawsuits. However, handbooks need to be reviewed on an annual basis. And before publishing, I would definitely recommend that you have a legal counsel review those on an annual basis once those are updated.
And one thing that I do when we onboard a new employee is I give them the handbook to review and to acknowledge before they start working with us. But then also during our onboarding session with HR, I go through the handbook, and the things that I feel like are the most important, we touch on those items as we go through the handbook. Inclement weather policy, bereavement policy, what's expected as far as amount of hours for a full-time employee or a part-time employee. And confidentiality in our business is huge. So we talk on that. Several people actually talk on that topic while we're going through our onboarding process.
And the other important piece of that is an acknowledgement form that they signed that needs to be placed in their personnel file to say, I did receive this, I read it, and I understand all of the content.
So what are some mistakes that some of our friends have made running a small business in relation to HR? So you've already heard us talk about some of this already this morning. You do not have a job description or written documentation of what is expected in the position. Again, your employees cannot assume they know what you expect of them. It needs to be clearly written and understood. And Sonia, do you have some experience you want to share on that one?
Yeah, actually, I want to combine the first 4 the first 4 bullet points, because I think that they all integrate together. If you look at them and you understand each one, because businesses without job descriptions and expectations can really confuse the workplace, because nobody knows what they're doing and they don't know what they don't know, right? So communicating clear and concise duties and responsibilities can set your employees up for success. It creates that environment that helps maintain professionalism between the employee and the leadership team. Because if the employee knows what the leader is expecting, then there should be no gray lines in between there. And it indicates training. What type of training will be needed to maybe go to the next level? Or to, if you have a career path within that organization, that job description should have something, intuitive to that. And then it also provides the working conditions, like what's going to be needed in each area of your position. So it gives them a lot of information for them to understand what exactly is expected for that job position.
And I think an important part too to note is that job descriptions can change. especially if you're a new small business. This is your first time opening your own coffee shop. And you have a certain job for the person that's preparing the coffee, and then you may have a certain job for the person that's cleaning the tables. Those jobs may change. Maybe you have a superstar that rises to the top and you want to turn them into the assistant manager or the general manager. So you can change the job description as you see that it needs to be. But if you change it, make sure anybody that's in that position acknowledges the changes that have been made as well. And your job description should also have references back to your core values. That should be something that people see all the time. It should be in your handbook. It should be on your job descriptions. For us, it's something that we see on the back of our computer screen. So it's something that's top of mind all the time. And it never hurts to have refreshers and to bring those back up and to have morning huddles and have those discussions about what this value is and what it means to us and how we can apply that on a daily basis.
And also included in that, Crystal, which should be that acknowledgement form as well for them to sign they understand what you have put before them. And I'm gonna perform this as I see it.
Another important part of it is you've got to make sure that you give your employees the proper tools in their toolbox to make sure that they can do the job that you want for them to do. And also, when we talk about under communicating, if your employees are your family and you are working with them side by side every day, and you notice that they have always been on time, they have always been someone that's at work and ready to go, but then they might hit a time period that they're not that way, and you can tell they're disconnected. There might be something going on in their life, and maybe they're not comfortable enough talking to you about it, but as the boss, you should be able to talk to them, help them, lead with compassion. And if you do that, I promise you, your workplace will be a better place. Your employees will feel comfortable. They will want to come to work for you, and they're going to want to do their best for you because you are giving them your best as well. Every company that I know of says that you don't communicate enough. People want to know what's going on. If they're giving you their time, they want to know what's going on around them and what changes might be coming. I don't think you can communicate enough as the business owner. What do you think on that, Sonia?
I totally agree. I believe transparency is a big thing because employees want to know what's going on. They want to know what's happening in the workplace. I mean, we understand that there are some things that can't be disclosed. That is totally understandable. But just general information about the business and what's happening with it, and maybe the changes that are coming up, and just being consistent about that, just communicate. And I think it gives them a sense of being a part of the organization because they know they're in the know. And again, as Crystal said, they're invested and they feel like they're invested. So they put more into their work and they want to be there and they want to come and they're very productive.
And then a few other common small business mistakes is lack of knowledge about your federal and state laws. So FMLA applies to employers with over 50 employees in a 75-mile radius. But the EEO and Fair Labor Standards Act, which is what we were talking about with the exempt and non-exempt or salary and hourly, and the child labor law, most of those laws are going to apply to your small business. So make sure you understand what those are and what that means. That means labor law posters posted in your break room or somewhere for your employees to see that. That means not discriminating against anyone because of race, color, religion, national origin, age, many other types of areas that you have to be careful when you're hiring and when you're promoting within your businesses. So we have some links for that as well. Also keep in mind that the federal government may say one thing and the state law may say something else. You have to comply with the law that gives the most to your employee. So you have to keep that in mind as a small business owner as well. So these are a few things that I learned in my role as HR. I've always worked in the financial services industry or in the retail industry. Breaks weren't really a big thing for us, but I know in some industries it is. In the state of Kentucky, you are required to give your employees a 10-minute break for every 4 hours of work. And that is not clocked out. It's just a break. And in addition, Kentucky law says that if you have an employee that works over 5 hours per day, they must be given a reasonable amount of time for lunch. They don't define what a reasonable amount of time is, but we have just interpreted that to be 30 minutes is what we have interpreted that law to be on behalf of FNB Bank. Sonia, what feedback do you have on this one?
I just did some information with the company regarding this. And what was going on inside of their world was they had an employee that was working through their lunch break so that they could get off early to go to doctor's appointments or get off early to do some task. And so the individual that was in the position it wasn't really clear and concise on what needed to happen. So we did some research and we sent this to her, exactly what this says, that they have to have a 30-minute lunch after so many hours in a break. And so there also indicates in that rule on special circumstances. And we looked up that special circumstance, and it was more of like if there was like an electricity, something going on with the electricity in the organization, if they had some kind of gas break or something, other than what's going on in the business. But I know in your business, that special circumstance does lie somewhere else. So if you could share that so individuals can totally understand what that means as well.
Sure. One of our offices is very small, and we only have 2 full-time employees that work there during the day. So if you only have 2 employees in a bank, you have to have dual control. So those employees cannot leave the bank when it's just the 2 of them. So they do not clock out for lunch because based on the law, they do not have what we would call uninterrupted time. So we pay them for the full day. They do take their lunch, but they have to take it in the same building that they're working in. But in order to maintain that dual control, we do not require them to clock out. Now, we also have a few times where an employee might say, I'm running low on my sick time. I'm just going to work through my lunch today so that I can leave a little early and go to the doctor's appointment. Our philosophy at the bank is if you be fair to the bank and the bank will be fair to you. And so we will allow that on occasion, but we think it's important for employees to have a break and to get away from the day. So we do encourage you to take your breaks and to take your lunches, but there are special circumstances sometimes that just does not work.
Crystal,
Go ahead, Sonia.
I apologize. I have put all of the links for those laws that we had discussed just recently in the chat box. Again, if you just click on the link, it will bring you to the page that has the information we discussed.
Wonderful. And as we're talking, if you guys think of something that maybe you've encountered in your business, maybe something we say sparks a memory that you had, please don't hesitate to put that in the chat box. We'll be happy to answer questions for you. And you can reach out to me after the webinar as well, and I'll be happy to help assist you with any questions that you might have. So 2020 definitely brought on a change for everybody, small businesses, big businesses. COVID made us look at things differently in the HR world as well. We had to learn how to do medical surveys for our employees before they came into work. We had to learn how to communicate with people that weren't in the office every day. So we had lots of changes. Personally for us, we had to figure out how to rotate our staff so that people could be socially distanced, but still taking care of our customers, because the banking world didn't slow down during that. In fact, over the last year, our businesses has probably increased with mortgage loans and PPP and all those different things. So we had to learn how to do the same amount of transactions with less people actually in the building. It has changed a lot. The one question that we have gotten, and I know Sonia and I have both been on lots of webinars and trainings over the last year that has talked about, should a business require an employee to be vaccinated? And I want to tell you a few things that I've seen and what I've heard from local businesses, and then kind of what we did ourselves at FNB. One of the questions that we received prior to the webinar was, how hard can we push our employees on the issue of COVID vaccinations? can we offer incentives to those employees that do and provide proof of being fully vaccinated? The company that Sonia works for has actually had some trainings and specifically related to this question, and it's kind of 50-50. Some people will say, yes, it's okay to provide incentives. Some will say you probably shouldn't. I'll tell you what FNB did. We made it easy for our employees to get vaccinated. We had vaccination clinics in each of our markets, and we made it to where they could come in, the employees could come in, and their spouse or other family members. So we made it easy for them. We did not provide any specific incentives for those employees. But last week, I think, or 2 weeks ago, when the governor said that we were going to comply with the CDC guidelines, then we were able to tell our employees that if you have been vaccinated, then you no longer have to wear your mask at work. But those that have not been vaccinated are still having to wear theirs until we get to the point that they lift the mask mandate completely. So while we didn't really provide incentives, the ability to not wear a mask has certainly been an incentive for some of those employees, and were quickly sending me their proof of being fully vaccinated. Sonia, did you have anything to offer on the COVID vaccine?
I think we're seeing the same. Businesses are doing what's applicable to their business and waiting for the lift of the mask regulation as well.
And I will also say I have friends that work in some of the local hospitals. And while the local hospitals sometimes do require vaccinations, they are not even requiring the COVID vaccination for their hospitals. They've made it easy for their employees to get vaccinated, but so far it has not been a requirement for them as well. Another important part, we believe, when you're trying to hire for your small business is the interview process. I think a lot of people take the interview process for granted and ask a lot of the same questions, and many times it's yes or no questions. You should never really ask a yes or no question during an interview. You should always leave that open so that you can learn more about the person. Most of the time resumes are pretty uniform, and it's hard to tell people apart based on their resume. But I have found that the interview process is usually the most valuable part of the process when hiring a new employee. So I have shared with you a few of my favorite interview questions. The very top one is one of my favorites because I feel like in any business, we spend a lot of time on drama, on the way employees interact with each other and with your customers. So I think one of the most important things you can do as a small business owner is find somebody that fits with your values, with your personalities. So these questions help draw that out so you can learn more about them. Tell us about a conflict that you had with a manager, a coworker, or a customer, and provide specifics on how you resolved the conflict. I think the way someone answers this question will tell you a tremendous amount about whether they are able to forgive and move on, whether everybody else is afraid to, or if they can see someone else's side of a situation. You really don't want someone working for you that's always right and never sees when they're wrong. Would you agree with that, Sonia? Have you learned a lot from behavioral-based interview questions?
I agree. And it also gives you a sense of the stress level that they can handle during a conflict situation. Will they de-escalate it? Or if they can't just de-escalate it, will they find help to assist them with de-escalating? And I think that's huge because like you said, not everybody knows everything. I mean, you learn something new every day, or I do anyway. So you definitely want to see that personality and that behavior and how they're going to react to that.
Another one that I really think is good is the very last one on this slide is, if you did not have to work, what would you do? I think this question is not a typical interview question and sometimes may catch someone off guard. Don't be afraid to have a little bit of silence in an interview while someone is gathering their thoughts. Sometimes silence is uncomfortable. So allow that time for the person you're interviewing to think about the question and come up with an answer. I think giving them that time to really think about it, it's better than just some canned response that they might have from their practicing interview questions.
And it doesn't like restrict their thoughts either. I mean, so they can just be open at that point, because that question could lead to could tell you a lot of things. And the biggest thing into their personality, if that's going to be a good fit for the job that they're applying for. Will they succeed in there, or will they not succeed? And what will you have to do if there are maybe issues in that position with them?
Another thing I have thought about that might be beneficial to you is think about what type of position you are hiring for. If you're hiring someone that's going to be the face of your business and it's going to be important for them to work well with others, then you may want to ask questions about what types of teams they have been on in the past. Believe it or not, your people that have been on a basketball team, volleyball team, baseball team, anything like that, they're going to have a little bit of a better work ethic because they're going to understand the value of depending on someone else and letting go of some of their own responsibility and depending on your teammate to help carry you through that. So think about what type of position you are hiring for and build your questions around that. If your position is going to be something that's behind the scenes and there's no interaction with anybody else, it's going to be difficult for someone that is a people person that needs that interaction. So you don't want to stifle who they are because you just want to fill a spot in your company. Don't settle. Make sure you hire the person that is the best fit for you.
I agree. And also leadership skills are important as well, because they can know delegation and assignments and, group or individual. Those skills are very important when it comes to, placing, if you see someone that can start at an entry level and where you can work them into a leadership role and what that looks like.
You guys, we have gone through the presentation that we have. There are so many different topics within the world of human resources, and we want to help you. We wanted to build this to be what you needed it to be. So if you have any questions, please submit those in the chat box. If you have something specific that you might not want to share in front of everyone, but you would like to reach out to Sonia or I know that we would be able to help you with that if we can. Michelle, do you guys see any questions or anything we need to address?
That was a great presentation. Haley and I both took several notes. And one thing I really like that you just talked about was the interviewing process. And I think sometimes people just want a warm body in there to fill a role, and then maybe it doesn't work out and they find themselves in the position where they're constantly hiring and maybe finding the wrong people. So I really appreciate what you wrote or what you said about take your time and make sure it's a good fit for both sides. And I think sometimes during the interview, both, you and the person you're interviewing can talk through about how that's going to be a good fit. So I really liked your points there specifically.
I also want to add to that interview process. I know in my experience that I would bring the supervisor in as well, that's in that department, to interact with this candidate, to get the feel of, can they work with this manager? And the manager would, again, ask them those open-end questions about the task at hand and how they would handle certain things that would go on in that position. And it also gave us a good feel of, will that person be a good fit? Will they not be a good fit?
I'm glad you brought that up, Sonia, because that's one thing that we do too. I always try to have someone else in the interview process because everybody can have a different view. I also have like a evaluation. So if it's myself and someone else interviewing, before we even start talking after the candidate leaves, we fill out a form and we answer these questions and rate it. And then if you get down to where you've got two candidates that are really close, you can kind of go back to that evaluation and say, oh, well, I scored this person 28 points. You scored them 29. They were both higher scored than our other candidates. So sometimes that can be a deciding factor. And that has really worked well for us in our experience.
I know right now we see a lot of, businesses hiring mostly, in the service industry. I know that industry has really been hurting through the pandemic. What do you feel like you could give advice for some of those employees who need seasonal help or maybe an hourly type position, do you feel like are the best avenues to sort of advertise those jobs for people to get hired? I know that the chamber we have where you can post jobs as part of your membership. But what other ways do you feel like are good to find, maybe some of these people who don't have any experience, like they're a high school student or a college student, they don't have a lot of work. What is that onboarding like? And kind of when you're trying to hire people, what does that process look like when you're trying to advertise the position and help train people on maybe like their first job ever?
And we have had some of those. We hire a lot of students, they can't work for us until they're 18. So a lot of times we hire them straight out of high school, and we use them for the summertime between high school and college, and they come back to us in between their summers or in between their terms. And we literally treat every new hire the same, especially when it comes to our security and our HR and all that, because everybody needs that same information. But we make sure that we lay the groundwork of what our expectations are and what this position is. And I just think you cannot do that enough. I don't think you can talk enough about what those expectations are and then remind them and then check in with them. You can't just get them in their door and then just release them and think they're going to know everything. So you have to kind of check back in with them. We do it at the 30-day marker, at the 45-day, and just kind of follow back up and check in and see how things are going.
I agree, Crystal. We've done that in my previous experiences and positions. Is we set, the onboarding process was a couple days. We went through all of the logistics. We went through safety issues. We've also went through like the evaluation process and what that looks like. And then we did do like a 30, 60, 90, so that in between those times, if there were any things that were not talked about or not communicated to, or they weren't comfortable in their positions, we didn't know that 90 days out, or they just all of a sudden didn't come back to work because something was going on in that time span. So it's so very important that you communicate that throughout those 3 months and even beyond, like setting up a mentor or a buddy to the person that they can go to if they have a question, directly speak with them and build that rapport and relationship with that individual so that they feel comfortable and they feel part of the family and integrated into the company.
I think those are great points. And I, really set the expectations on the front end. That way everyone has, a clear path of how this will be successful. And then I know you said earlier in the presentation, you can't communicate enough with one another. Mm-hmm. And so hiring the right person is so important because of the amount of time that it takes to onboard somebody. You just said maybe the first 2 days or so in the first 30 days. And so if you're constantly finding the wrong person and just going through this onboarding phase, I can't imagine your business is, I know that's probably a frustration for a manager when they're just wanting to kind of get their business going. So these are great pointers for everyone listening, for sure. Any other thoughts you've had as we come here to the end of our presentation this morning? Anything you feel like you wanted to say before we get off here?
Thank you for having us, Michelle. We appreciate you hosting this for small businesses. I do think this is a concern that they have, is that a small business owner is trying to get their business off the ground and survive after 2020. So if we can help in any way, I have dropped my email address in the chat box. I'll be happy to help answer any questions that you might have.
Agreed, Crystal. I am so happy to be here with you guys. It's great to see you again, Michelle. And what we've noticed in our business is a lot of small businesses, small and medium, are using consulting, asking questions through that, having them come in to do their HR because of the laws and the changes and the rules and the regulations that are going on that sometimes they clearly don't understand or they're not clear to them. So we are here also. I'm here to help as well. So I'll put my information in the chat box, but we are seeing a lot of that outsourcing happening within that HR realm with these businesses, just to make sure that they want their HR people to be strategized and strategic and not always putting out fires. And Crystal and I know in our positions, we did a lot of that in our career path. So we definitely are here to offer any assistance that needs to small businesses across the state of Kentucky.
I love that. You don't want to constantly be putting out fires. And I know, we try to solve what keeps people up at night, and, managing people can be really hard. And so setting some of these things that you have said today as priorities, it would really help people in their business. And so I really appreciate all the information this morning. We are so happy that we're recording this because we know it will be very critical for people in the future as we do our Membership 101 classes here at the Chamber. For new members who particularly maybe have questions on specific things, we have these videos now as resources to share with them. And so whereas we would love to be in person, like Amy said earlier, video does have its place. And so we really appreciate you both being here with us this morning. This is great information. And if there are no other questions, we're going to end this morning. Thank you again to FNB Bank for making this possible. We really appreciate their support and participation and partnership here at the Chamber. And so with that, we're going to close out. So thank you, Crystal, and thank you, Sonia, for being with us this morning. You guys have a great day.
Thank you.